yeah, I was not the best student academically at all. I was about a little above average, I would say, but I also kind of blame our schooling system for that. Like, we don't have the best schooling system that kind of
No, absolutely not.
encourages more of like applied thinking and those kind of things. So for someone like me, it didn't really work out. I wasn't very academically inclined from the word go. I was the very, like, I loved to perform. I wanted to, be in the school plays. I wanted to be singing in school. I wanted to be dancing, all of that. Because it was also like a way of just kind of expelling my energy, because I had a lot of energy as a kid.
Right, hello to the good people, ladies and gentlemen over the internet. Today we have with us the very lovely singer-songwriter, harpist and a music educator, Nush Lewis. Thank you so much, Nush, for joining in and taking the time out to do this.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure from my end. The number one question I ask to guests normally, especially this is a playlist I'm doing, is the singer-songwriter checklist, right? Where I have singer-songwriters come and tell their journeys and, inspiration. How is it that you have started making music, or what was your let's make music moment? Like, were you born into a family of music? Everyone was surrounded by music. How did that happen?
Sort of. I mean, we are a very musical family, and that doesn't mean that like we have like I come from a family of professional musicians. No, I come from a family where music just plays a big part. We all like really enjoy music. It was very normal for us as a family at like dinners and lunches to sit together and sing. My uncle would bring his guitar and all like those kind of things was just something that was, we just grew up in an environment like that. And I'm so grateful because like, I mean, even my parents for that matter, I think played a very big role in like keeping music sort of as a staple part of just our daily routine. Things like we used to wake up to the radio and, in the car there was always music playing, and then at home, if we were not doing our homework so that we didn't get distracted or
That's
whatever,
like
we
most
would
of the
always have
time.
music. Yeah, so we would have like music playing in the background. My parents loved buying like cassettes and CDs, and we would listen to like all kinds of music. And and both my parents also like sing so I think for me, I grew up in that sort of household where like music was just there, and I think that contributed to a large part of me wanting to take this up as a career. So that's the kind of like space I grew up in.
That's a space all aspiring creative individuals, especially musicians and artists, want to grow. And especially in India, and in every household, we have a sitar or a tanpura lying in the corner of the room. So anyway, you are a musical family. Right.
Yeah, or a harmonium. Like a lot of my friends over here say that they went for harmonium classes, and like if they were doing like Hindustani or whatever,
Indian
they learned
classical,
harmonium on this. Yeah, so I think even for us, just like culturally, a lot of people like just growing up, it's like, okay, you will go for like a singing class or whatever. I mean, that's not to say there aren't people who come there. I know a lot of people who don't come from any musical background, but are now like in the industry today. So it's very interesting to hear those journeys as well, where they kind of discovered music either through friends and like, through somebody gave them a CD or like a song, or they heard something and they were like, oh, this was cool. And then they wanted to pick up the guitar. Whereas we were just surrounded by, just like, listening to music was just a thing, and singing was just a thing for us. So I think everybody, I think all these journeys kind of impact in very different manners and manifest for all of us very differently in our careers. So, yeah.
Exactly. And normally what happens is, the thing you talked about, it's very good, like the spark. Like, for example, a friend of yours made you hear Led Zeppelin for the first time maybe, and you're like, oh, that sounds cool. and you come home and
Yep.
request your mom and do all of the goddamn homework you need to do to get the goddamn guitar from your mom somehow or the other.
Yes.
Cut off all
Yes.
your expenses. Don't buy jelly beans or Oreo biscuits. Just somehow
Yeah.
you gather that money, buy a guitar, practice the hell out, and 10 years down the line you're playing a festival. That's very interesting, inspiring.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And like you rightly said, it's that one song that will inspire, like, it can just change something. And I think that's how powerful music is. And I think that's beautiful. Is
Even if you
to
start
have
with
that
honey sing,
power.
that's fine. Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely good,
Whatever.
yeah.
Whatever you want to start. Music's music at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Perfect. How were you academically, like when you were a kid? Like in school, you were doing music with academics? Were you good at that? Or like me, were you like horrible?
Yeah, I was not the best student academically at all. I was about a little above average, I would say, but I also kind of blame our schooling system for that. Like, we don't have the best schooling system that kind of
No, absolutely not.
encourages more of like applied thinking and those kind of things. So for someone like me, it didn't really work out, I wasn't very academically inclined from the word go. I was the very, like, I loved to perform. I wanted to, be in the school plays. I wanted to be singing in school. I wanted to be dancing, all of that. Because it was also like a way of just kind of expelling my energy, because I had a lot of energy as a kid. So yeah, I wasn't like an academic student, and I think that that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like it's important also for people and parents to kind of accept the fact that if a child is not academically inclined, it's okay. It's not the end
It
of the
doesn't
world.
matter,
To
actually.
really, it doesn't. Absolutely. Like, I always think of, like, people's board results. Like, there's still so much of pressure on your
Who will
10th boards
tell
and your
them that
12th
after 5 or 6 years, there's no fucking need
Nobody
of that?
cares. Like, you walk into an office for an interview. Nobody cares what marks you got.
Can you do the damn job?
Exactly.
Because anyway, the company needs to train you, even if you graduate for 4 years and study anything. Irony is that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's sort of, for me, luckily also, I think after a while, like, my parents were just like, okay, she's different. She's different from her sister, because my sister was very academic, and she still is, and blah blah blah. Whereas they kind of realized quite early on that, she's just different. She is not someone who would kind of fit into just how everybody else is doing
Mainstream
things.
stuff,
And
yeah.
I'm very appreciative of that, because they let me kind of be and do my thing. I remember till once I was, like, out in college, there was no, like, real pressure as such, in terms of, like, oh, you must do this and you must do that. Like, my sister kind of went, like, the engineering way of her own will when she was
The
an
Indian
engineering
way.
student, etc. Yeah, absolutely. Which everybody thought, like, my parents had forced her to do, but they didn't. She was the one who was just like, I want to study science, and I want to, because she's that sort of person. I, on the other hand, went into the arts and all of that, and I'm kind of very appreciative of my parents for giving me that space and that, sort of that support to do,
Yeah.
to kind of do what I wanted to. Because as much as, like, yeah, I, like, my mom always says, what would you have done if we didn't kind of give you the support to do what you
Good
do?
question.
I was like, I would have done it anyways. You know what I'm saying? But it's always, it really is so much more helpful when you have that support from your family. And I know that, like, I'm really lucky in that sense, because I have a lot of friends who didn't have that kind of support and
Yeah.
those kind of things. So it's kind of, I that way I had a bit of, like, a smoother sail, just because, like, my parents were very encouraging, and they were like, yeah, if you want to do this, do it, but do it well. And I think that was, like,
Exactly.
the bottom line. But my dad used to always say, you can be whatever you want to be, just be the best you can
Yeah,
in
be
whatever
damn
you're
good.
doing. Yeah, just be
Yeah.
good at it, don't just, like, simply do it for, like, fun. So
And
in
half
that
the
sense,
time,
like,
what happens is you have been knowing yourself for let's say 18 years, for example, a child. but your parents have known you for 18 years and 9 months, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they exactly know that you suck at a craft, to be very, very honest, and you want to pursue that. So in that sense, they say don't do it, because they can't say that you are not practicing enough or you're not doing that enough, because they know. And once they know
Right.
that, you're good at something, for example, if a child is good at sports, it will just reflect. Anyway, the parents will
Yeah.
say, like it normally happens in the sides of Bihar and Jharkhand, everyone goes into
Yeah.
wrestling and sports and all of that, because they're damn good at that from the very childhood itself, right? And I think
So-
sometimes what happens is having supportive parents, and if not also, what we can do is, I think, and even I want your opinion on this, that is, first prove somehow that you can do it at a level where other people can't do it at that level. For example,
Yeah.
you run fast, other people can't run fast.
Yeah.
That's good. Everyone will support you,
Right.
for example. So what's like your thought on
Right.
this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, because that's pretty much sort of where I came from. Is even though my parents gave me support or whatever, but there are enough of people in India to talk about, like, your choices. Unfortunately for us, you'll have an uncle and auntie who will come in and say, why is she doing this? And I didn't know that she had studied music so deeply, and actually I didn't. So it's also sometimes it's also having to prove yourself. And it's not to prove yourself to yourself, because you know what you can do and your parents are, but it's to prove yourself to be like, see what I did? And it can be a little childish. It's a bit petty. But I feel like when you can be this petty to also find out how like persistent you are to persevere whatever you want to, like in whatever you want to do, I think that's okay. I think that pettiness like drives,
You understand
like,
your
if someone's
capability in that test.
yeah, absolutely. And it's also that bit of like that little sort of, it could be considered to be a little competitive when something like that happens, or where someone says something that triggers you to be like, wait, I'll show you, and I think
I love that.
yeah, and I think that I sometimes feel like that's literally how I got into this.
Let
It
me
was just
tell
like,
you.
yeah, I was just like, one minute, like it was one of those like hold my beer like situations. Like, I'll show you what I can do, and I think that little like I know I had a bit of that like stubbornness as a kid. Was this very like, if someone said like, what are you, crazy? You can't do this. I'd be like, 1 minute, like let me just show you. And that's confidence overriding my skill. I probably didn't have even half the skill that I have today. It was just like, whatever, I'll do it. I'll show you, And interestingly, I think my dad was one of those people who was just like, you want to do it? Go do it, So I think maybe I get that from him, is this very like that little arrogance to like show people, So I guess it worked out in that sense, and it's still sort of working out for me. Yeah.
I love that. Wait, let me show you. Let me give you a piece of myself. You wait there.
Exactly.
Piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. When did you think of making this as a career? Like, what was the process? Like a 1 week process? You sat down with a pen and paper, wrote down, okay, I'm gonna make music for a living in India, and in India, and in India, blah blah blah. So how do I do that? What was the process?
For me, very honestly, it was in my final year of college. I studied in Bangalore, and I was lucky enough to join like my college choir, which was fantastic. And my college choir back then was conducted by Mr. Sunil Chandy, who was the ex-member of Thermal and a Quarter. He was the first bass player for the band back in the day. So he was always in this frame of mind of like composing music. So he used to compose music for the choir to sing. So we were one of the few choirs in India back then who sang original music. Apart from like doing covers and all of that, we also did a good amount of like original music, which is where I think my appreciation for composition kind of started. And that, I think by the time I was in my third year of college, I kind of knew this is what I wanted to do. Of course, that's also this push and pull of like, oh, should I go and study filmmaking? Because that's what I thought I would either go into filmmaking or I would have, I don't know, done something. I mean, I would have become a musician. And I think it was that sort of that tug of war at that point. I was trying to figure out like what I wanted to do. But something that kind of came into realization for me is when I was in college during choir, we used to practice every day for 45 minutes during our lunch break. So our lunch break, which was a 1 hour break, 15 minutes, we used to just inhale some food and then run for choir practice.
Inhale some food.
But yeah, literally. But it was that 45 minutes of choir singing that would turn a bad day into the best day. And that feeling of just singing with people. And we would do this every day of the year. I don't think there was any downtime for us except for during our exams. So that is where I really learned. I mean, I think I grew to love that. And I was just like, what if I get to do this every day? And I think that's where that thing of like, oh, I want to get into music sort of professionally came in. And I think it was also that fear of, I didn't want to ever regret that. I didn't want to look back one day and be like, what if I tried to get into the music industry? And for me, that's sort of like, if I had to look back and question what if, I would have regretted it. And that's literally the motto I live by even today. Is I always pick projects in a way where I'm just like, I don't want to look back and be like, I should have done that.
No regrets.
Regardless of, no regrets sort of thing. And I feel like I've lived like that ever since then, sort of very unapologetically myself. Like whatever failures I have, I've taken that in my stride. Yes, I take full accountability and ownership for bad decisions that I've made. And you have to, especially when you're in this, when you take a decision like that to get into the industry that we are in, you have to be ready to take the hits of like, oh, that was a bad choice or that was a bad decision.
And that's like most of the time normally.
Yeah, and the thing is, you will learn from that 100%. Like those bad decisions that I've taken in my career today are the ones that I don't take because I know the repercussions of it or whatever. It's also making sure you don't repeat those mistakes again and again. And I think for me that is something that I've lived by, and I'm zero regrets to where I am today in like my life. So.
When we were in school, you were a teenager, did you learn the harp or you were learning any instrument? Like how did the harp came? Because that's an instrument I love, honestly.
Very honestly, for me, the harp was a thing that happened much later in life. I started when I was 21, when I joined music school in Chennai. That's the first time I actually walked into that school as a vocal major. And my theory teacher, Alison Margaret, was a harpist. And so obviously the school had a harp that she used to use, blah, blah, blah. And I remember seeing her perform once at like our school annual day program. And I was just, I think more than obviously, I mean, it's one of the most magnificent sounding like instruments that to hear live for sure. But more than anything, it was the mechanism of the harp. It was, and what I saw was like a full size concert harp. So I was very intrigued with like how it worked and all of that. So I just kind of approached her and I asked her like if I could start, do a trial class, and she was very keen and she said, yeah, sure. And it was one class led to another. Before I knew, I was practicing the harp more than my vocals. And then I just, with her help, we were able to shift my major and things like that. But as a child, I did study piano for about, I want to say about a year and a half, not too long, but long enough to get the basics down in a sense. I went back to playing piano when I was in music school because for us, piano was our secondary instrument and was mandatory for all other instrument students and voice students to learn piano. It was like you had your principal instrument, which for me initially was voice, and then I moved to harp, and then your secondary had to be piano. So I got back into like piano playing when I was in music school, which was I think one of the best things that kind of happened because it really, piano playing really aided my harp learning as well, just in terms of like understanding theory, those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, I think I didn't, but I didn't have music education as a core part of my childhood. Like music education, no. Music, yes. And like music making in the house, all of that, singing with my parents, blah, blah, blah. That was, yes, I had that. But I was not taught formally as a child, except for those like maybe 1.5 to 2 years of piano. And that was it. All my formal training happened like through college choir, and then like music school, of course. And even music school, I did a program that was just a year-long program. There was no like, I mean, I didn't do a degree or anything like that. And then after that, it was pure, I think everything else I learned from the industry. Everything else was like self-taught, which in a way, for the kind of person that I am, it worked out really well.
Well, yeah.
So, yeah.
So it's like self-education.
Yes.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Thanks.
What was your first, as a musician, as a composer, and as a educator, what was your first commercial project you got, and what was the reaction of your like, okay, this is working out?
As in like commercial project that I did?
Yeah.
So this is the thing, is I didn't get into the commercial industry like whole and soul at all, actually. I've done a few projects, but like very sort of like I was called in to do like a session for somebody. I did all of that. For me, I got into music education.
Yeah.
Because I think I got into music education purely out of like, oh, I need to earn something to kind of make ends meet. So I joined this little school where I was teaching little children. And that's where I also realized how much I love teaching.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, and I really think I am blessed and fortunate to, when I started off my education career, I worked with incredible people who were very experienced in that line. So my mentors in music education have been key in having me to choose education also as a part of my life, because I learned a lot from my mentors, and that passion for music education really grew. And even till date, even though I don't actively teach, a lot of my work still revolves around in education. I still do consultancy, I still do like project building, those kind of things. And of course, I mean, 2017 I launched offset education, which just became like the other half of my life, And a lot of people, I remember once somebody asked me, but if you had to choose one, which would you choose? Like, would you choose performance or would you choose education? And I was just like,
that's a dumb question.
Yeah, I'm just like, I want, and the thing is, I want to have both. It's just a matter of balancing it out, and which is why I don't actively teach anymore, as much as I love teaching, regardless of age group, all of that. But I know that if I do want to do a certain amount of like performances and touring and things like that, I cannot be having students that are waiting back for me. But what I can still do is still work in the realm of education, but in different sort of sectors of music education, that like working with teachers, curating workshops, planning projects, or planning, programs, those kind of things. And for me, that was my main source of income, pretty much through my career, because once I started writing, I also started teaching at the same time. So that's like, if anything, my music that I've made has been paid off by like the work that I did in education. I think most of my funds came from there. So yeah, I mean, for me, I've done a lot of music collaborations in terms of like commercial work. I've done some collaborations that have been like really good. But none of them that I would look at and be like, oh, like, this is that point, or this is that, that space where it would break out for me. No, because for me, I was always in music education, pretty much right from the word go. I think I started working in 2011 in education. I want to say 2010, 2011
it's like
is when I started.
It's been over
there.
a decade now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's been a very long time of being in this field. And I love it. And I
Yeah.
always encourage like a lot of artists to do a bit of teaching in their lives, just because uh, there is something to it. Like
Exactly.
it's also very grounding when you go into a room with people who kind of, where you're supposed to kind of exchange knowledge and exchange concepts and teach things. It is a very grounding moment. You also realize how much you don't know when you start teaching. You're standing there being like, oh my god, I have to like now learn, because you
I
people
didn't
ask
knew
questions,
minor
right?
seven existed.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh my god, I need to revise my notes, or I have to revise like certain concepts in music theory in order to like teach it. And
Um,
that's when you get better at it also, is because now you have to figure out how to break down a concept to its
um,
lowest common denominator in order
uh,
to
make the
explain it
student
to someone.
understand. Yeah.
Yes, and for me, I think when I started teaching was when I actually understood music a little better. Forget me learning it. That I think I didn't understand certain concepts till I started teaching. So that also made me a better musician.
Hey, hey.
So yeah, for me that was sort of like uh that like, oh, I
Aha.
now have commercial music that's coming. Yeah, and an aha moment. Yeah, for sure.
That's really, really interesting, honestly. When did you start touring as a musician, and how was it like touring as a musician born in India?
So I've never done any full blown tours, very honestly. The last time I actually went on did an India tour, was, and by India tour we always mean it's like 4 cities, like 4 or 5 cities. It's never more than that. Um, that was I think back in 2019, and I did like smaller ones before that I had like engaged on my own. I think it's touring is easier for artists who sing in any regional language, very honestly, because they can easily move into tier 2 tier 3 cities as well, and do like really good shows over there because they sing in regional languages. For
Hmm.
artists like myself who sing in English, we're also very it's we are in that very sort of like, we're very restricted
Niche.
in that sense, like, yeah, and it's also restrictive to the number of cities we can play, and just in
Hmm.
terms of catering to an audience. So we are always playing like your metros, like a Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi, Pune. That's sort of like the realm that we have to kind of work with. Um, so I've never done any full blown like tours as such. But I'm hoping to do that starting this year. Hopefully, do at least maybe 6 cities, if nothing
Wow.
else. Uh, I mean, that's a hope. Whether it happens or it doesn't, that nobody knows.
You plan
Because
to come to Calcutta?
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure. I think it's but very honestly, it's uh touring for indie musicians is very hard, and that is
Yeah.
because uh like, especially if you're doing it on your own, chances are you're not going to make that much money.
Or even break even.
Unless you're going in, yeah, yeah, like breaking even is, you're lucky if you're breaking even. Um, I feel like it's also harder to get sponsors to come on board to like sponsor your tour or your events or something like that. So you've got to
Hmm.
be really kind of smart with stuff like that.
Understand the
Or you've got
business.
to have enough, or yeah, see, the, I feel like as artists, a large part of our job is, it's we basic if you have to run it like a business after a while. You have to
Yeah.
look at like brand value. Do you have a logo? What is your like overall theme, your look, all of that. It has to be packaged in a certain way for in order for you to approach a sponsor and be like, hey, would you guys be interested in coming on board to, sponsor my tour in some shape or form? Whether it is paying for flight tickets or, stay, because especially if you're going with a band, then there's logistically there's so much more that's happening.
Yeah. Mm.
Solo is definitely easier because then you have to take care of yourself, and that's so much easier than having to take care of a band and like
Mm.
pulling three other people along with you, all of that.
And pay
um
for 4 beers instead of one.
yeah, exactly. It's like it's one of those things. So I think uh but although having said that, this year was the first time I went play internationally,
Wow.
which was in Australia. I got to do that in
Australia,
March.
yeah.
Yeah, which was fantastic. And even from that, like there is so much that I learned even though it was not an extravagant tour in terms of like, I didn't do multiple cities. I basically played 2 cities, but I played an entire festival in 1 city. So I did about like 7 shows in Adelaide alone, and then I went to Melbourne and I played 1 show there.
Wow.
So a lot of my time was spent in Adelaide, and just from that experience itself, like playing different venues in in South Australia and then playing Melbourne, there was a lot of learnings from that. So now I kind of know how I want to go back,
Ah.
and figure it out for next year. Whether I'm going with the band or I set up a band over there or whatever, I kind of know how to let that work. And that, I think, inspired me a lot to kind of think of how I want to even work with stuff here, in order for it to kind of reflect outside India, all of that. But touring is a challenge. It's a lot of work. It's a lot
Yeah.
of just, I think, right from coordinating, and you've got to be lucky. Like if you have management, it's easier. But
Yeah.
if you're doing it on your own, it's a lot, because you have to not only figure out what your set is going to be like. So in terms of all the creative stuff, right? So right from figuring out who's in your band, what is your set going to be like? Do you have, are you playing with tracks? Are you not playing with tracks? Is this like a fully live set? What is everybody going to be wearing? Production wise, what do we want lighting to do? Are you traveling with visuals? All
The
of that. That's just
logistics
the
and stuff.
creative side. That's just the creative side of it. Then you need to start thinking of venues. What kind of venues are we playing at? Is our music is our music conducive for that space? Do we want a standing audience? Do we want a sitting audience? What time in the evening do we want to start? Because that dictates everything else. Then comes flight bookings, and comes like hotel
Staying,
bookings.
traveling, food.
Yeah, travel within the city. Do we have a pickup with all our gear from the airport to our, either to the venue or to our hotel, all of that. And it's a lot, So I say, if you're doing it on your own, in case you have a band that's like everybody sitting and working together, it's one thing. But in my case, where it's like, obviously these are Nush Lewis shows, it's harder to get my band involved because they're also session musicians. So they play with other artists as well.
Yeah.
For me, they're coming on. So then I have to pull the reins for everything. And it is a lot. It's not easy. If you have management, it's definitely a little more easier, because your manager will take care of certain logistics. You then just focus only on creatively what's happening on stage, production wise, what are we looking at, the visuals, blah blah
Delivering your craft to the audience.
delivering your craft. Yeah, exactly. Having said that, though, I'm glad that like for the longest time, actually, I've always self-managed myself. So what happens then is you kind of learn the ropes of the industry yourself. And again, you will make plenty of mistakes, and you will do a lot of things wrong in order to do it better now, So I'm glad that I have done a lot of self-produced tours on my own in order to know what goes into it, and kind of like just, so say today I have a manager, it's easy for me to understand what their job is. So if they come to me and they say, Nush, we are going to, like, these are the challenges that we have right now planning this tour, I'll get it, rather than throwing a fit and be like, you guys are not doing your job, whatever. But because I know that's the reality of it, which is why I also tell like a lot of the younger kids who are getting into the industry, and they say, oh, we want management, and it's great that you want management, but do it on your own just for a bit. I'm not saying you have to do it for as long as because I probably did it for too long. I've been self-managing myself for too long, where I micromanage a lot now. Like even if I'm working with management, I tend to micromanage a lot of things. So I always tell kids, do it on your own, just so that you learn the ropes, so that nobody's gonna. Also, this helps with people not having to mess with you. People are not going to take you for a ride once you know how to work the system.
Exactly. You have to know the thing which you're entering, right? Because the management and whoever you will work with, honestly, they're sitting to make money. That's it. And they'll make it anyway. So you have to understand that. Otherwise, they're like fool you, honestly.
That. Absolutely. Which is why I tell a lot of kids like coming in, just be like, do it on your own for a bit. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to like mess up a few things. It's okay. And luckily for today, I feel like the kids today are a lot more luckier in terms of getting information is so easy to get, For us, it was very like, I wouldn't say it was a different kind of challenge for us. everything had like, you had to have face value, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
I also tell a lot of kids, you have to go for gigs, because they're like, oh, we're not able to get
Yeah.
shows. It's like, okay, but how many shows have you gone for?
Simple.
And then they'll be like, oh, I don't get the time. It's like, no, you have to make that time to go out and watch your contemporaries at their gigs, because it's at these gigs that other people will see you as well.
Yeah.
You can, and that's the best place to ask people who programmed this set. Like, who is the, who's the programmer for this particular venue? Can I meet them? The more you show people your face and you talk to them and create a relationship with them, I'm not saying you have to wine and dine them, no. But just reminding people like, hey, this is what I do. Can I send you my links? Or can I have your email ID so I can send you my profile? I would like to play at this venue, even if it's like a small acoustic set or whatever that is. I think that's really important for like, because sitting at home, nobody's going to come and be like, hey, do you want to play a gig? That's not going to happen. Or nobody's just going to call and be like, hey, can you play?
Hey, I'm going to pay you $20,000. Come to Australia.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. You have to really get out there. And I think it's important for like,
Be a
for
bit
like
shameless,
musicians.
what I think.
Yeah, to also kind of go and just be supportive of people on your scene.
Honestly.
It hits different. It hits different when you see other musicians in the audience. I'm always happy when I see like my friends and my contemporaries in the audience who have come to watch my set, because we're in this. It's almost like seeing like family members in the audience. I mean, it's a different joy,
Yeah.
It's like your fans and all of that, and your listeners are one thing, but when you see musicians in the audience who have come to listen to your set, it really hits differently. It's very heartwarming. Yeah, I love seeing like my musician friends and producers and all when they come for a show. It's like it's very different, and I think that can also spark new things. Like after a set, somebody comes and says like, "Hey, I feel like your sound is something that would sit well with some of my songs. Would you be interested? Can I send you something? Whatever." It's always a small, like it sparks smaller things. So, yeah, I think that's important.
Plus, anyway, like for example, if people are not geared, like for myself, I'm not a very technology-driven, gear-driven person. But if I go to a show, and as a guitar player, I see other guitar players playing a particular guitar, the amp is set up a different way. I'm like, okay, that's a tube amp. Okay, what plugins you're using? What's the output source? What are the pedals? So I'll get to know a lot, and it's good to say to people that I don't know. It's fine, absolutely fine, because you may not know what's the problem.
That's true. You learn a lot from going to gigs as well. Like I've learned I think a lot of my learning just as a performer has come from when I go to gigs and see what other artists are doing and how they do certain things, and it is 100% a learning experience for musicians. So I always push like people to just go for more shows.
And even the first time, I think I knew what's a audio workstation, but it didn't knew this name DAW. I was like, what is this? And to its simple definition, one of my friends explained it to me like it is here where you make music, you arrange tracks. I'm like, oh, okay. This is DAWs, it's like digital audio workstation and how you work. I'm like, oh, this is how it works. And then it kind of becomes simpler and simpler and everything. Like, oh, it is easy as water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very, very good. Very good. That's a very good point. What does a day look like in Nush Lewis's life from the morning till a night?
I'm a morning person, so I wake up pretty early. I'm pretty much up by like 7 a.m.
That's my sleeping time.
The first thing I have to do is feed my cat. There's another living thing in this house.
Okay.
I wanted to sleep in. He's like,
how many cats do you have?
I have one cat, and that's enough for me. Yeah. So for me, my day starts pretty early, and I kind of like that. And I've always been a bit of a morning person as well. So I wake up at around 7. The first thing I do is either make my chai. I'll be sitting with it. Either I'm like scrolling through something. If I'm in a mood, I do a lot of morning playing. So whether that's on my piano or on the harp, then I'll either sit with one of my instruments and just, it's not really practice. It's just me playing around, fooling around with it, whether it doesn't necessarily have to become a song or whatever, but it's almost just like practicing. I'll sing covers or I'll sing some of my stuff and then maybe write something or whatever. And then like by 10:30, I've pretty much started my day. So whether it is depending on what it could be, like an education project, or it could be something. So like a lot of email work. Do I need to figure out, put something new on my website? All of that happens through the day if I have to do, calls or whatever. So for me, no 2 days are the same. Very honestly, it all depends on like what's happening at that point. But no 2 days are the same. Like one day I'll be doing this, the next day it's like completely different. Like right today it's like, oh, I've got like rehearsals starting from like 1:30 onwards. I have to be there, like all of that. So no 2 days are the same, but yeah, I think that would be the skeleton of like what my day is like. Yeah.
Pretty interesting. And we come to the last question of the session. Nush is very happy.
No, I've been enjoying this conversation. It's been lovely. Tell me.
That finally he's understanding something. From your decades of playing and performing and teaching and being a musician in a nutshell, from your practical experience of what you have done and learned, kind of give 3 pieces of practical advices to everyone, musicians, artists, creative individuals at whatever level they are, including me.
Right. Okay. From my experience, I think the first thing that I would say is trust your gut. If you feel whatever piece of music that you have created, if it has come from the most honest, genuine place, firstly, that piece of music will cut through everything. And if you feel that this is it, and you don't want to change anything about it because for you, that's what sounds right, and it hits you in a way that it doesn't hit anyone else, then that's it. My thing is firstly, just trust your gut 100%. My second piece of advice is whatever feedback that you get from people, whether that's at a live show or a studio or whatever, feedback or criticism that comes in, you can choose to not take certain things and you can choose to take certain things. You know what I'm saying? Because unfortunately, we live in a world where everybody loves to give their 2 cents on like everything. Okay.
Or like the first point, like let me give you my piece.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who are not even qualified to do it, but unfortunately in the arts, it's like this. People will be like, oh, you're a bad actor, or you're a bad singer, or I didn't like that song. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. It didn't work for you and that's fine. So
next time maybe.
Being able and the thing is, we're not here to please everyone. Obviously,
you can't, yeah.
A lot, I know that my music works only for a certain audience. Like they like my music. Not everybody is gonna like your work, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not like by all. So even with feedback, I think pick and choose feedback that will work for you.
With a pinch of salt.
Because some people can be very harsh with their criticism and will say things like, oh, you should probably quit, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to listen to that, I would say don't take things that would like break you, because that's the worst thing that could happen as a musician. And so I think pick and choose feedback that you want to take and throw away the rest. You don't need to listen to it. It's okay. We're all here learning. I mean, there is, I think the whole idea of the music space is that constant space of learning and that constant space of discovering new things. So if something didn't work out, it's fine. The next one will be better. You'll now know what not to do. So that would be my second piece of advice. And I think my third piece of advice would be to just keep listening to more people, collaborate more. And this whole, unfortunately for us in our industry, music making can be very isolating. But collaboration is something that I have learned over the past 4 or 5 years is one of the most beautiful things that you can do, because you learn so much from other people. So yeah, I would say my third piece of advice is be open to collaboration.
A bit shameless. That's good enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very lovely chat I've had in the morning itself. Like, this is my morning, people, 12 p.m. a.m.,
Nice.
whatever it is,
Nice.
12 noon.
Yeah.
For the people I'm saying she doesn't need an introduction, I'll leave all of the links of her music, of her everything down in the description. Please check them out, support, stream, do whatever the hell is needed to be done. And I would like to thank you for taking the time out to do this just before the rehearsal. It means a lot.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I'm so glad that we had to have this conversation. It's also very motivating for me to now do the rest of my day. So thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation.
And from my end, it's one of the most generous conversations I've ever had till now. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend ahead, and all the best with your rehearsals and everything.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye. Take care.